Can the U.S. problems in Iran embolden its adversaries worldwide, and what consequences may it have for Europe? Well, to talk about it and more, we're joined by David DeBatto, Geopolitical Analyst and retired U.S. Army Counterintelligence Officer. Good evening, sir.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for accepting it. So, the conflict with Iran has reportedly led to the depletion of U.S. Patriot missile stockpiles. And this also has direct consequences for Europe and Ukraine, well, which is unable to protect its cities from Russian strikes due to the lack of the aforementioned interceptors. Now, despite Donald Trump urging Europe to take care of its own security, of its own defense, the continent still largely relies on deliveries from the U.S. So is the time-consuming production of Patriot missiles posing a threat to all the West?
Well, let me just start off by saying that as a former member of the U.S. military, I find it very disturbing, and I hate to agree with Trump on anything, but I find it disturbing the number of leaks that are coming out about the shortage of precision munitions in the United States arsenal, whether they're Patriots, THAADs, ATACMS, Tomahawks, or what have you. I'm a firm believer that this kind of information should not be out there in the public domain because, of course, our enemies, those who wish to do us and our allies harm, will make great use of this. Having said that, yes, absolutely. Since it's already out there, yes, the European allies that in Europe, NATO and even the EU, and of course Ukraine, are going to have a difficult time in the short term trying to replace the precision weapons, especially the Patriots, which are really the only defense against the Russian ballistic missiles that are hammering Ukraine every single day and night. So, yeah, there's a real problem with that. And I will say that NATO does get it. It's taken a while, but they do understand the danger that they are in from a possible Russian incursion. The Ukrainians definitely get it. The Baltics definitely understand it, but the rest of Europe is finally getting it. They are really speeding up their game, upping their game in trying to develop their own Patriot-like missiles, in retooling their peacetime defense industries, or peacetime industries rather, into a wartime footing, their factories and so forth. They are starting to do that. It's going to take a little while, a lot longer than I would like and they would like, but they are getting it. But it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Well, you say it's not going to happen tomorrow, and therefore I'm wondering whether, this policy of protecting your own technology, can it backfire on the U.S. as, well, its allies could be looking to acquire maybe a nuclear weapon if deliveries of Patriot missiles are uncertain here?
Well, that's an argument that's been out there, that the United States can't release its secrets. It cannot give, for example, Ukraine, which has been talked about recently, with the plans, with the license, with the ability, permission to make Patriot missiles, that we need to keep a close rein on that. But, we can't have it both ways. America, that is, either we're going to allow Europe and Ukraine to defend itself in the only way that it can right now, which is with Patriot missiles, or we're not. And if we're not going to supply that defensive umbrella, which we're apparently not, at least not right now, then we need to give them the ability to produce the means to defend themselves, which are the Patriot missiles. However, and I have to say this, they're not waiting for that, especially Ukraine. They are developing their own defensive anti-ballistic missiles, as well as offensive ballistic missiles, and they're very close to deploying them, and we can talk about that if you want to. So, no, I don't fear if the U.S. were to give them the ability to make Patriot missiles domestically in their own countries, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
You're right. President Zelensky claims that this very autumn Ukraine will have its own long-range missiles, but it has to secure the shipment of components first to make sure that the production goes on as smoothly as it is planned. And I'm wondering about two things here. First, whether this would be a valuable addition to Ukraine's arsenal, as it already is able to strike Russia deep inside with its drone attacks. And the other question is, who will Ukraine try to convince to supply it with components for its long-range missiles?
Well, Ukraine, as always, is a few steps ahead of us. They've already done that. They are in contract mode. They've signed agreements with several, I believe it's 5 or maybe even 7 European countries to supply them with the components of long-range ballistic missiles, both offensive and defensive. And I think it's called the FRIA system. Essentially, though, Ukraine is going to be making the missiles, the delivery systems, and the explosive payloads. However, there's going to be at least 2 or 3 different countries, including Norway and Germany, that are going to give them or make for them, the Ukrainians, some of the components, the tracking systems and GPS and so forth. But they've already entered into contracts with that. In fact, as I said, the Ukrainians are very close. We're talking within weeks, possibly, according to Ukrainian sources, of deploying one of their long-range ballistic missiles, which will be a game changer. And by middle of next year, they're going to be deploying both offensive, meaning even longer and faster ballistic missiles, and defensive, meaning the ability to shoot down the ballistic missiles that are incoming from Russia. So in the next few weeks to, say, 6 to 12 months, they're going to be able to hammer Russia, similar to what is going on right now in Ukraine, and shoot down the majority of the ballistic missiles that are incoming right now to Ukraine.
So you're talking about deliveries from European partners. So no China involved here whatsoever. You know, I'm asking this question because actually both Russia and Ukraine, they both use the very same components for their drones, right? So partially it's like China is controlling the situation in Ukraine.
Well, it's kind of funny you ask that, because what Ukraine is so good at doing is using many off-the-shelf components. So sure, they're bastardizing, excuse the word, but they are using many components that have been used by the Chinese, but they're also just using some things that are off the shelf. I've seen them actually order off the internet and take those components, re-engineer them, and make them into their drones, which they've, of course, advanced the whole science of drones a great deal. So they're not depending on China, or certainly not on Iran or Russia. When they do capture some of those drones, which they have and shot them down, they re-engineer them. They use the components there, but China is not really a player in this part of what certainly what Ukraine is doing right now.
Lastly, let me ask you about Greenland. So an American company is reportedly about to start drilling in Greenland without a proper permit from local authorities. Now, could this affect the ongoing talks on establishing more U.S. bases on this disputed island?
Yeah, I mean, President Trump obviously doesn't want to let go of Greenland. Look, I think that Greenland and Denmark, who was ultimately the partner with Greenland, overly responsible for that, are perfectly fine with the United States building as many military facilities as they want on Greenland. We already, the United States has permission to do that, has for, well, since the World War II. They don't care how many facilities we have, how many United States service people are assigned to Greenland, how they operate there. That's not the issue when it comes to taking over Greenland, or in this case, talking about drilling in Greenland without permission. Even though the Trump administration says they have permission, they don't. Then there becomes a whole diplomatic row again, and I don't know what's going to happen with that issue. But in terms of military bases, I think we are going to station more Americans there and build out the bases we already have there.
David DeBatto, geopolitical analyst and retired U.S. Army counterintelligence officer, was our guest this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. That would be all for now. So stay with us for more interviews and news here on TVP World. And let me wish you a fantastic week and see you soon back here on TVP World.